Good afternoon. I'm Don Pinnock, and pardon me, my guest this afternoon is Françoise Malby-Anthony. And we're going to be talking about elephants and much more. Hi, Françoise.
Hello, Don. Thank you.
We tried last week and the echo drove us off the air, but we much better this time. Now, we're sponsored by ABSA. It's a company that cares about wildlife and nature. Nicole Williamson is running the technicals, and we will be recording this, so if you have to grab lunch and miss some, you can always go back to it. We're chatting for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open for questions. The panel on the right, you can pose your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Now, what we're celebrating today is this book. It's a wonderful book, and it's your second book, or maybe it's your third. I'm not sure. The other one was Elephant in My Kitchen, which was just such a wonderful title. Now, I'm going to start by reading a paragraph from this book because it captures your whole life in a way, and we can unpack it from that point. So I'm going to read it, and it's just so beautiful. My Thula Thula journey had been entirely driven by love. First I fell in love with Lawrence, and then the land, and then elephants. Somehow the elephants got into my soul, and it became my life's work to see them safe and happy. There was no giving up on that vision, no matter how hard the road was at times. Let's backtrack from there, Françoise. You met Lawrence on a taxi, didn't you?
Waiting for a taxi.
Looking for a taxi. Could you tell us that story?
Okay, waiting for a taxi in London. We were by chance staying in the same hotel in central London. That was in January 1987. It was freezing, minus 17. It was extremely cold. And we couldn't find a taxi, so I was first on the queue. He was last in the queue, and the porter was asking every single person, "Where are you going? Can you share a taxi?" And when the porter came to ask me, "Would you like to share a taxi with a gentleman at the end of the queue? We are going to Earl's Court, the same place." I looked at Lawrence and said, "No." So that's where Lawrence had his first taste of French attitude. Well, he still married me after that, so it didn't matter.
I think you must have been a good person whisperer after that. But François, what are you doing before entering that taxi? I mean, what is your backstory before Lawrence whisked you away to Africa?
I was working for a chamber of commerce, and I was organizing trade shows for small French companies who wanted to export their products. So I was traveling the world at that time.
Yeah, but basically you were a city girl. You'd never really seen an animal in the wild. You were scared of dogs. And somehow you got involved with Lawrence and you ended up in Thula Thula. I mean, it must have been love because it certainly couldn't have been rational behavior.
Yes.
Now, 35 years, is it 35, 36, 34 years later, you're running a game reserve. It's stuffed with wild animals and you have a pack of dogs. Now, how did you cope in the beginning? Could you talk about those beginnings? It must have been scary.
Well, my first time in the kitchen at Thula Thula, when we had just moved in, and it was a little bit rustic in those days. And I was busy cooking rice, and suddenly a frog or a mouse, I know it was a mouse, jumped on my stove while I'm cooking. Exactly half a second later, a snake and swallow that mouse. Of course, that was one of my first encounter with wildlife. It was a bit of a shock. I've never seen a snake in my life. I've never seen a mouse in my life. So let's say that the beginnings were harsh. Let's put it like that. It took me a while to adjust. Then there was the scorpions, and there was all these kind of things then there were the elephants, of course, which really changed our life. But and then we start having dogs as well. So it just shows one thing: people can change. That's a sure thing. Because nobody ever thought I would end up in the middle of African bush with a pack of dogs and elephants and animals all around me. Never. I was a city girl.
It's an extraordinary story. It really is. Now, Lawrence died tragically 10 years ago, and you were suddenly responsible for absolutely everything. You must have wondered how you'd cope. Fundraising, anti-poaching, dealing with officials who were giving you trouble, and on top of that, smiling at guests, because guests also stay at Thula Thula. Could you take us through a bit of the transition? It must have been a real shock and a lot of decisions for you.
Well, at the beginning, I was totally unprepared. When Lawrence passed away, I was just dealing with the business side of Thula Thula, the lodge, reservation, finance, etc., marketing, and all. So suddenly I end up having to deal with conservation, which I really had very little knowledge. So I just thought, well, I'm going to learn. That's all. And above all, surround yourself with no better than you in conservation. That was the secret. And then, as I say in the book, passion is a secret to persistence. Some moments of discouragement and some moments when you feel really rock bottom, but you've got still that goal in front of you, which keeps you going through tough time because you want to achieve things. You got that goal, that purpose, and that's called passion. That's all. It's just passion.
I love that. That's a wonderful soundbite. Compassion is the secret of persistence.
Yes.
It's lovely. But then, of course, you were hit by COVID. That must have been very difficult. Could you talk a bit about that?
COVID was for me, because I was everlasting optimistic and positive. No, it's not going to last. It's going to last 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I was over optimistic, and I got extremely down at some stage because I really thought, no guests. A game reserve is not a place that you can just lock up and go. You got animals to look after. I've got 50 staff members to look after. I've got to protect my rhinos, like we do all the time, 24 hours a day, and our elephants and all our animals. So it was very tough. In the book, I explain how we survived COVID. There are some fun stories about it. But what I really think that COVID taught us that nothing is ever granted in life. And the secret to survival is the ability to adapt to new situations. So we had to get creative. We had to find some new things to create an income. And it did work. It did work. So because we survived. But as well, what I'm very grateful about the South Africans as well, because we couldn't get any foreigners during COVID. And the South Africans supported us wonderfully, and we're very grateful for this.
Oh, that's amazing. Now let's talk about elephants. You got your first 7 elephants in 1999.
That's correct.
And
yes.
They were problem elephants. You got a pack of bad teenagers, basically, and started with elephants in the deep end. Could you talk a bit about the first elephants?
Yes, those 7 elephants, they were problem elephants. They were going to be put down. And with Lawrence, we took the decision very quickly when we were asked, would you like 7 elephants? We didn't think any further. We just were very happy to have 7 elephants. I don't think we thought of the consequences. The electric fencing we had to do in 3 weeks all around the game reserve. And the concept, we didn't know anything about elephants, to be honest with you. So what happened is that we made it go right. We made it happen. They arrived, problem. What we did not expect, they would escape 24 hours later. And then we run after them with Lawrence in the Zululand bush. It took us a week to find our elephants. Can you believe that you can lose 7 elephants? You can. And we were driving around asking the local population, by any chance we haven't seen 7 elephants. I think people thought we were a bit cuckoo. But we found them eventually thanks to a helicopter, 7 elephants. And now, I'm very proud to say we've got 28 elephants. Happy and being taken care of, and they being our pride and joy, Thula Thula.
Well, that was daring. You say that the initial calming down of the elephants was due to a conversation that Lawrence had with the matriarch. How did that happen? Because that's the beginning of elephant whispering, really.
That was, That was absolutely. But you know, Lawrence never liked the word that he whispered to the elephant. He used to say, "They talk to me," or he listens to them. This is how communication was between him and Nana, of course, the matriarch. What happened is that when we got them back, the elephants, we put them in the boma, put them back into the boma. They had to be recaptured and so on, darted, etc. And when Lawrence found out that if they escaped again, they were going to be put down, definitely, as the wildlife authorities had taken that decision. So Lawrence decided to do everything like exactly what I was saying. You have to adapt to new situation in case of adversity and pressure. So he decided to stay around the boma for 24 hours for about 12 days. And that's how it started his relationship, if I can say it like that, with the matriarch, which was extremely successful because there is a way that the both of them connected, which was that moment where actually, I could say the whispering started probably, and the matriarch communicated with the rest of the herd that actually that was a place they mustn't escape again. And they didn't.
But that's interesting that Lawrence also got the message, because as soon as the communication was clear to him, you opened the gates. You just let them out. You
That's exactly
trusted
right.
that they would not run away after that.
That's exactly. Trust had started. That's it. Trust was created. For elephants, we never trusted humans because they were badly treated before. They were going to be put down. So that amazing moment where Lawrence and Nana created that huge connection, which created the future of this herd, the happy future of this herd.
You also talk in your book about an elephant called Frankie, which had a lot of impact on you. Could you talk a bit about her life? Because it seems just extraordinary.
Frankie was amazing. Frankie tried to kill us with Lawrence about 20 years ago, so we remember her very well. We were on a four-wheeler motorbike, and she arrived from nowhere, and she really tried to kill us. And Lawrence, again, had that amazing reaction. He stood on top of the motorbike, and he said, "It's okay, it's me." And I don't know if Nana whispered to Frankie, "No, don't kill those two." I don't know, but we were not killed, we survived. But it was the scariest moment of my life. I really thought, that's it, that's the end. And
you were being charged by an elephant.
It was charged, yeah. No, she was on top of us. She was about to squash us. And from that day, I understood the word respect for this big thing. Well, number one, they're much bigger than us. But from that day, and after that, it's been an interesting relationship that I've had with Frankie. So Lawrence had a relationship with Nana, and I had a relationship with Frankie. It was a love and hate relationship. She used to come and see me very often. Frankie became the matriarch because Nana lost her eyesight. But Frankie with a herd used to come and visit me very often at my house. And it was like an interesting relationship. And actually, the book, originally I wanted to call it An Elephant in My Garden because Frankie came into my garden, which is my private space, you know. And Frankie didn't care. Frankie had her own way of leadership. Nana would have never done that. You know, Frankie, she was just bold and feisty. And I don't know, she was very special, very, very special to me. Yeah. I don't know if I can say what happened to her during now, but in the book you'll see it's one of the saddest. Actually, it was the most difficult chapters to write for me because
I'm sure it felt like it, yeah.
Emotions, yeah.
So Nana was very much Lawrence's personality, and Frankie was pretty much yours.
I believe so because my name is Frankie too, and Lawrence called that Frankie because I don't know about the French temperament.
It's your name, yeah.
Yes.
I remember spending a little while in Thula Thula, and a new elephant that you'd got walked up to the garden from a pond. And Lawrence said, "Oh, I haven't really had a conversation with this elephant. I can't remember which it was." And he walked towards it, and I'm standing on the veranda going, "He's going to be killed." And he walks up to this elephant. The elephant walks up to him. And he's standing right next to this thing, talking to it. And it's cropping grass, as they do when they're comfortable. You know, they just like, pick up things with their trunk. And then he bowed and said goodbye. And he turned around, and the elephant turned around. And he walked back, and the elephant walked away. And I'm going, my goodness, elephant whispering works. What is it? What is it how does communication work? These are extraordinary animals. They're deeply intuitive, and you said they gave you a sense of purpose. How is this communication happening?
This communication, you see, it's very. I think it's something very personal. You know, any kind of communication with animals is very personal. It's from your own feelings, your own knowledge of the animal as well. I don't think it's easy to communicate with an animal if you don't know it. Number one, all our animals, all our elephants have got names, so we know exactly which one is what. I think if you get to know those elephants, Lawrence knew all of them, of course. There were 21 elephants when Lawrence passed away, and Lawrence knew every single one of them. I think communication is something very personal, and Lawrence has always been an amazing communicator. He's got a way of talking, the intonation of his voice, and which is very soothing, probably very reassuring. There's something about him, Lawrence, which was really different from other human beings. So maybe, but I mean, communication, anybody can communicate with an animal. I think it's something very personal.
But it seems animals communicate with each other. You have a story about an elephant interfering with your attempt to translocate antelopes.
Oh, yes. That's a beautiful story. That is a beautiful, can I say it? Yeah,
yes.
That's an amazing story. Now, we had a game capture at that time with guys because we were very small, so we had to reduce the number of certain category of Nyala. It was Nyala capture. So they did the game capture, but and they put them in a boma, an enclosure that they create, not a permanent boma. Voilà. So they put them in the boma. There were about 10 of them. They were going to be shipped the following morning, those Nyalas. And that evening, Nana arrived, and she knew that trick, Nana. She was absolutely unbelievable. She knew exactly how to open with her tusk. She knew how to open the latch of the gate of the boma where the Nyalas were inside. She opened the gate and she watched the Nyalas coming out until the last one left. And then off she went with the herd into the bush. Absolutely unbelievable. But now, you know the story why she did that. This is what's interesting. Because that game capture company had done something that the elephant didn't like.
Really?
While they capturing the Nyalas, I think there's game capture guy, they're a big cowboys sometimes, not all of them. They shot in the air or they shot in the ground to get the elephants out of the way of the game capture. And I don't think Nana liked that very much, and I think that day Nana decided to go and release those antelopes because I think that's the reason. I think so. There's not a scientific explanation, it's just the explanation that you do not shoot at elephants, that's all.
I don't think there's not much science in elephant whispering, but the elephants are supremely sentient. There's no doubt about it. They're very much like us. They have families. They care about them. They're concerned about death. They're aware of these things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But it's more than elephants. It's also about rhinos. Now you mentioned to me at the beginning that you've had. It's World Rhino Day today, right?
Rhino elephant, World
Rhino Day.
Yeah, World Rhino. Yeah, that's right.
Now you have some good news about that.
Yes, I've got some good news. I've got you talk about my book, my previous book.
Yes.
Yeah, an elephant in my kitchen, where there's quite a few chapters about rhinos and rhino poaching, which is actually very sad. But I think my book is being translated in Chinese and should come out in December in China, in simplified Chinese, I think it's called. So let's hope that it's going to bring a message of actually what happened to this species in Africa because of the demand of rhino horn in China and in the Far East in general. Let's hope that it's going to have an educational effect.
It's interesting. We had some good news the other day. Colin Bell and I wrote a book called The Last Elephants, and it's just been translated into Chinese.
That's fantastic.
So we hope for the same reasons you do that the message gets out.
Absolutely.
But let's go back to rhinos, Francois. You talk about a rhino love triangle and a bull that didn't know how to initiate sex.
The sex life of our rhinos is one of our big preoccupations at Thula Thula. We extremely concerned. Well, Tabo, I'm going to talk Tabo. Tabo was 1 day old when he was found in a game reserve in the Free State. So he was rescued, was taken to a rehab center up in Hutsput, Mohololo, where he was taken care of. He had some health issue, of course. And he was an orphan, and he was 1 day old, which means he only saw humans. So from the beginning of his life, this poor rhino thought he was a human. He saw another female rhino a few months later because we got him, he was 4 months old. Then we got another female rhino from Tombi 2 months later. So which means Tabo and Tombi were the couple of Thula Thula. Our last rhino was killed in 2009 and Heidi by poachers. And then we got Tabo and Tombi, and we took the decision that we would take care of them no matter what. And this is what happened. And they are 13 years old. Tabo hasn't been interested in producing babies with Tombi. So 3 years ago, we bought him a very expensive girlfriend called Mona, a beautiful rhino from another game reserve with great hope of new babies, and no, it didn't work. So last year in December, we had some fertility tests on Tabo, and unfortunately we found out he was sterile. So now at least we know why he couldn't produce anything. I believe what we were told is that it comes from the fact that they often the trauma from the past, and this happens in a lot of orphan rhinos in rhino orphanage. So I don't know, this is what we were told by the doctors who did the fertility test of Tabo. And so 1 week later, we got a rhino called, a male rhino called Rambo. So the problem of Tabo that he had never seen a male rhino in his life. He had only girl rhinos. And so it was, the first encounters have been quite interesting. But I'm afraid that Tabo was being clapped a few times by Rambo, because Rambo is much older than him, about 3 years older, is bigger than him. And Rambo has been filling up his mission. He's carrying on. He's got 2 females. He's got Tombi and now Mona. And we got great hope of new babies in about 15 months' time.
Good for Rambo. To jump back, sorry, carry on.
Yes. No.
Just to jump back to the antelopes, somebody's just asked what happened to the antelopes that were let out by the elephant.
They stayed free roaming because the game capture left. They didn't want to recapture them again because they thought our elephants were out of hand, so they didn't want to recapture them. So we were, the antelopes stayed free roaming at Thula Thula.
You accepted the elephant's decision. But Francois, rhinos are such a huge issue, and poaching must be a massive problem for you. Give us again some indication of what it's like to have rhinos in a situation with such high poaching. Because most of the rhinos in South Africa are in private reserves. They're not in the national reserves. But yes. Poaching, how do you deal with it?
Well, how we deal. We take care of them like if they were. We take them all the time, 24 hours a day. I've got, just to give you an idea, we've got game rangers looking after them from 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. They take turns by vehicle, follow the rhinos. We've got 5 rhinos. Follow them and inform. We are on a WhatsApp group. Inform us, a private WhatsApp. The position, location, and what they do of each one of our rhinos. This is what we do to take care of them that during the day. During the night, we've got an anti-poaching team who take care of them. So this is how we take care of our rhinos. We dehorn them every 14 months. We used to do the poisoning of the horn. This is what we try. I was very reluctant to cut the horns of the rhinos. So at the first, I tried the poisoning, which I thought was an absolute brilliant idea, until I realized, I was told that poachers don't care whether the rhino horns are poisoned or not. So we decided to do that decision in 2016. We think it's the best solution. But even though they're still at risk, so we still have to have, we've got cameras all around the game reserve as well, which can show us intruders. I mean, we've got drones, we've got, we've got Project Rhino in KwaZulu-Natal, with of a great help as well for private game reserve, helping us with air, the check from the air as well. So much is done for these rhinos. It's just unbelievable. It's
so you have people,
non-ongoing fight.
So you have people following rhinos all the time. That must be a very expensive operation.
It is. It is. It is.
Sure.
Exactly. But we've got rhinos. They are 14 years old, 13 years old. We take care of them. We know exactly where they are. And voila. But we've been a threat. But I've got a top-notch security company as well, top-notch anti-poaching company. We get informed if anything happens. So we prepared.
But you also say you shoot to kill, and you also poison horns.
Did I say I shoot to kill?
I saw an interview with you, but it might have been some time back. Yes. You're not killing any poachers anymore.
Well, we try not. But I'm not saying that. Can you keep a secret? No. No, we're not allowed to shoot to kill in South Africa. We're not allowed to.
Yeah. Okay. But you do. You also say that a technique possible is poisoning horns. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, we used to in 2013, because Tabo, 2 weeks after Lawrence passed away, Tabo was shot at by poachers. So that's really when I decided that we had to do everything in our power to try to save them from poachers. So we did the dehorning in 2013. No, sorry, the poisoning of the horn in 2013. Sorry, until I realized that poachers don't care whether the horns are poisoned or not. We had the whole operation done. I thought it was the most brilliant idea, but poachers don't have any. Who is going to consume it? The guy who is going to, the guy who is going to consume poison horn is not going to go and complain to
he's the innocent. They're the innocent end result. Yeah. Can I just make a gap here? If for you watching, please submit questions for Francois. That's what the panel is on the side is for. So please do. Now there is a debate, and just widening the issue a bit, Francois. There are. I mean, how important are private game reserves? Are they just tourist attractions, or how important are they to conservation?
I think that more and more people are people from all around the world are more interested in. They are tourist attraction. We have to have decent accommodation, nice accommodation, so on. Even some have got huge luxury, but the conservation value has taken over. the luxury and the beauty of the law, etc. People are looking more to be educated, to learn about what we're doing, and to be inspired as well to work for conservation. And I think that the more and more of the people who come to Thula Thula, for example, what they say, they learn so much when they go on game driving. And I think that's the whole purpose of it's about conservation value, and as well volunteers. Like we've opened a volunteers academy because I really believe that education is key to conservation. So a lot of people are coming to that volunteers academy to learn about the behind the scene work in a game reserve.
Could you talk a bit about your volunteer academy? It sounds interesting.
Yeah, we got very small. We created in 2018. We got quite a lot in the book about the Volunteers Academy, the work that they do. So on the morning, they work in the game reserve. They do work, conservation work, whether it's they help with the monitoring of the rhinos, for example, or they work into the game reserve, maybe helping with roads, cutting alien plants, anyway, all this kind of work, working on the fencing. So all the behind the scene thing that guests don't see what happens. And then in the afternoon, it's educational. They go and learn about the elephants, they go and learn about the rhinos, they go and learn about the giraffe, they go and learn about all the animals. So it's completely educational. 3 hours game drive in the afternoon with game rangers who educate them. Morning it's work. So they pay a certain amount of money, which is a very small amount of money, but they stay in a beautiful, very rustic camp, but well positioned on top of a hill, with beautiful view on the dam and on the. So it's people have it's life changing. Voila, for young people, not only for young people, for older people as well. It's absolutely life changing. People, I've seen younger. Teenagers, after 2 weeks at the Volunteers Academy, completely transformed, extrovert. You see, we've got very little Wi-Fi reception up there, so they don't have the choice. They can take photos, but they don't have the choice. They cannot be on their machine all the time. They just look what's happening actually around them. They look at nature. They reconnect with nature. Voila. And all the funds paid by the volunteers go into our foundation, Thula Thula non-profit organization, which is a South African conservation fund. So it all goes well. So, but it's nice. The next volunteers will see exactly with the money that the previous one have paid, what we've been doing, etc., etc. So it's all in all, it's purely for conservation value.
The other conservation value of private reserves that I found is that for rhinos is that most rhinos are in private hands in South Africa. South Africa is very unusual in that you're allowed to privately own wild animals. It's quite uncommon in the world. And I was looking at a graph, the latest graphs from Kruger, and the rhino population is like that. It's just declining permanently. It's heading for zero. And most of the rhinos now are in private hands. And can you rehabilitate a rhino into the wild from captivity?
Yeah.
That must be a conservation value if you can.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this is what we've done with Tabu and Tombi. They were 2 little orphans. They were 4 months old, orphans, and we rehabilitated them when they were 18 months old. So we fed them with milk and so on. They had carers with them as well. And after 18 months old, we put them into the game reserve, but always protected, always with a carer with them. You see, they were always with humans. After that, now they're completely free roaming. They're still being watched because for their own protection. But elephants, rhinos are very easy to rehabilitate into the wild. They're not like lions, for example, which you can't. But easy. Elephants and rhinos, no problem at all. Just with rhinos, there is a problem of producing.
It's all about sex, sure, with the rhinos.
Yeah, in our communities, yeah.
Francois, we have a question from Celeste Mulholland. She says, there's a few questions there. Are the original elephants, how many of them are left from the beginning? And you talked about educational events. And a bigger question, which we can look at more generally, is what's the future of Thula Thula? Now, let me just break that down. Original elephants, do you have any left from the original?
Yes, we've got 5.
Because they're long living.
Numzan and Frankie, no. Remember Numzan 2007 had to be put down because he was seriously, he had serious problem, destructive problem. And Frankie, who passed away last year of a disease. So they didn't die of old age. Nana is still alive, Marula, Ilanga, Mandla, and Nandi are still there.
The other question is what's the future of Thula Thula? There's another question from Marguerite Fleur Wade Jones. And these two questions go together really. What's the future of Thula Thula? And if money was no limit, what would your ideal game reserve be like?
Well, it was exactly the dream that Lawrence had, a huge conservation area. That was his dream. That's why we bought Thula Thula 24 years ago. And that was his dream. We were a tiny little 1,000 hectares fenced area. Now, in 3 months' time, we're going to be 5,500 hectares, which is an immense achievement. And that I'm very proud of. And the elephants actually are going to be extremely. That the reason is to be able to keep our elephant family. The future of Thula Thula, if money was no other, we would be expanding tremendously into the dream of Lawrence. He wanted Lawrence, he had always very big ideas. He saw very big high, and so this is what I would think. And creating a huge conservation area with more lodges, of course, because you have to survive in this business. And if you don't do any hunting, you have to survive by hospitality side. So if money was no the problem, that we could do something extraordinary for creating more space for wildlife, which is an absolute priority nowadays because of loss of habitat of our wildlife. And this is when I talk about the vanishing land for wildlife because of human encroachment. Getting
so if you had endless funds, you'd take over KwaZulu-Natal, right?
Yes, for example.
But there's another question from Paul Barnard, and it really also talks to your expansion. What is your relationship with the local community? How do you educate that community? What's your relationship with them? Because you are in an area where there's rural. It's a rural area. So what's your relationship with the community? Well, you've expanded as a result of them, really.
Absolutely. We've expanded things. At the moment, actually, we're busy fencing local land that we lease from the local communities, and where we're going to create as well. We are going to help them to create a Zulu cultural village, so that and all the funds will go to the local communities. We are employing as well. All our staff comes from the local communities. We train them as well. We bring them training, and as well as a volunteers academy, what we do, we take every month, we take some young people, young men or women from the local communities who are interested in conservation, to educate them about conservation, to educate them at the Volunteers Academy. So we were very closely with the local communities. We are expanding thanks to them, in part with private land, in part with community land. And being in good terms with the local community is absolutely essential when you have a private game reserve.
Are school children, schools, groups, and
Yes.
people like that come?
Yes, absolutely. With that part of the Volunteers Academy, the educational part of Thula Thula, this is what we do. Yes, we organize school groups. Yes.
Perhaps you want to talk a bit about your wildlife rehabilitation center, because that would be a wonderful thing for kids to see.
Absolutely. Just to say that we just reopened it last November. We had some issue with some permits at that time. So now actually we're starting to get some game. We're working with rehab center called CROW in Durban. It's a center of rehabilitation of wildlife, and they rehab certain kind of wildlife. Then they bring them to Thula Thula, to our rehab center for pre-release, and then they get released into the wild, because the whole purpose of rehabilitation is to release into the wild where the animals belong. So we've got a jackal arriving soon. A jackal. We're busy organizing his collar at the moment. And then we've got some genets as well that we're expecting probably in October. So this is the kind of animals we get.
What about baby rhinos and larger stuff?
No.
So it's just smaller stuff.
Small stuff. No. I mean, we don't have a permit for rhinos. We don't have it. It's quite strict. You can the rehab center we cannot have birds. We cannot have rhinos. We cannot have elephants, baby elephants, unless they're ours. If they belong to ours, we can. But if it is orphan rhinos from other game reserve, there's another rhino orphanage in Umkuzi, Shushui.
Yeah, there's an outfit called Baby Rhino Rescue, run by Helena Creel, I think, or linked to Helena Creel, who takes rhinos. Yeah, a very hard job.
There are lots of places we take rhinos and we take care of them beautifully. So no, we are more into any kind of wildlife.
Now, there's another question. It's a question from Alan Patterson. He says, have you only had one rhino poached? Or have there been more?
That was you're talking about from the past. Our last rhino, she was poached in 2009. Our last rhino, Heidi. The others, no one drowned. I think we had only 4 rhinos before, in the days of Lawrence. We had 4 rhinos. No. I think one was killed by an elephant, by Numzan. 1 drowned, and I think 2 were poached of those rhinos. Well, that was before 2009. After that, the only rhinos we had poached were the one at the orphanage, when that gang of poachers invaded our rhino orphanage at Thula Thula and killed 2 baby rhinos who were 18 months old. They were going to be dehorned, and they got killed. That was 2017. Since then, of all our rhinos who are in the wild, roaming, we find they're being extremely under permanent surveillance.
Is there, what is the rules of keeping something like elephants? Because there's been quite a lot of science around how many elephants per area and things like that. Are you constrained by regulations? Are they good regulations? Are they difficult to work with? How are you dealing with the authorities?
I think the book explained a lot about those regulations, which we do understand. But what I believe, originally you have to have a certain number of hectares to keep a certain category of animals, and this is very well explained in the books in a couple of chapters. But I believe that for elephants, when we got the elephants 23 years ago, there were no such rules. I mean, we had only 1,000 hectares and we could get 7 elephants. I think rules and regulations were made along the way. So what I believe, before I left for England, there was, I don't know about the latest rule, I believe that the new rules for keeping elephants are changing at the moment, or there was a new law being discussed at the moment. So even less than 5,000 hectares can keep elephants, or we can keep elephants. Otherwise, there is a ratio according to the number of hectares. Yeah, that is correct. That was
so the size is important of the reserve to the number of elephants.
Yes, because because they say you need a certain amount of land, but unfortunately, they do not take into consideration the topography of the land. If you've got flat land like that, it's going to be completely different than in KwaZulu-Natal. We've got an amazing topography. We've got hills and valleys, which should make it much bigger. This is what always I used to hear Lawrence saying that all the time. You know, it makes sense.
So the laws are just blanket laws for any bit of land, whereas different bits of land can support different levels of
Exactly. As simple as this. Yes.
That's government for you. That's how it works. Let's get. I want to ask you another kind of question, and it's about giraffes. You have giraffes, and you call giraffes a silent extinction. What do you mean by that?
Because
are they in trouble?
People are not aware. They are on the vulnerable. What do you say? Listing.
Red data book.
Yes, on the CITES, on the CITES, they are vulnerable now, which is just before the endangered. So elephants are endangered, rhino are endangered, and giraffes will be endangered very soon because people don't know. They're being loss of habitat, same thing, the skin, the meat, the tail, So there is as well poaching problem with giraffe, which is quite incredible. There is as well with hippos. I mean, with so many.
I can't imagine who shoots a giraffe for what. I mean, can you mount a giraffe above your fireplace?
But you can. It's food,
Yeah, so it's for meat as well. I'm working now on a whole issue about cheetahs that are being exported from Namibia and South Africa to India.
Yes.
Which is a really strange story. I mean, we're kind of short of cheetahs. You had a cheetah issue. Do you have cheetahs?
We've got one. We've got a female cheetah. She's still waiting for her boyfriends to arrive.
You should ask India. Perhaps they should... cheetahs.
No, we know exactly where to find cheetahs in South Africa. It's just some administration issue here again, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So, yeah, but I know what you're saying, and it's a little bit. I think it's a wonderful idea. I just hope they I'm sure the people who are doing that, they kind of know what they're doing. It's they were extinct in India, and just hope that they will survive in this new environment. Let's hope. I'm no expert of cheetah, but I'm sure that the people who did that.
One hopes that they.
I know them. I think I know the people who did that. So I've got full trust in them.
Okay, because they might have to deal with bears and lions and things that they're not used to over there. Yeah,
tigers. Yeah, but it's just the same in South Africa. Cheetahs have got to deal with hyenas, with lions, leopard. They are very fragile creatures, so they're difficult to keep.
Okay, Francois, is there anything else you'd like to share with us about writing the book, about actually getting down and writing books, which is a hard discipline? Because your writing is so beautiful, so lyrical.
But I've got a co-writer. I've got a wonderful co-writer as well, because I'm French. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm French. No, I don't have an accent.
No, I didn't notice at all.
No, man, I'm French. My English is not my natural language. So I worked extremely well with a wonderful co-writer called Kate Sidley. She's a writer herself. And that's why it's beautifully written as well, I'm sure. But so I've told her all my stories, and she put it in beautiful English as well. So. And
you also have a wonderful photographer who works
Kim,
there. Could you talk a bit about her?
Yes, and she organized a photographic workshop. She's our permanent photographer. She does as well social media. She's been with us for years. She's got millions of photos of elephants, and she organized those photographic workshop, which are absolutely fascinating. They are at the end every 2 months, but normally they are at the end of each month, 24th to 30th of March of each month. And you learn so much about photography, and the most wonderful thing, because you do a 3 hours safari, and when you observe the elephants, so it's absolutely. And she's taken a lot of absolutely amazing photos. Yeah. And most of the photos in the book actually are from Kim MacLeod. Yes.
Yeah, they're lovely photographs. We just sort of winding down, Francois. What would the world be like without elephants? What would we lose?
It would be the elephants disappear from the planet. It would be a catastrophe for the ecosystem, a complete catastrophe. They are so important. Not only just for elephants, they are so important for the other animals. You see, elephants, when they push a tree, it's not only because they're angry or they want to get their nerves onto something. It's because other animals can feed from the top of the animals or from the bottom, from the roots. When they trample a path, it's to create a path for other animals as well. You see, they know how to find water. They know how to, they can, when they find water, it's for other animals as well. So there is that amazing altruism as well, that amazing empathy, so typical that you find in the elephants. But I think there's a lot of reason that shines the book actually of the absolute necessity of the elephants. Elephants are said to be destructive. They're not. They actually are creative in their apparent destruction. When they push a tree, that's exactly what I'm saying. And I make a comparison with them with the elephants during the riots in KwaZulu-Natal, that you didn't have that as bad in the Cape or in Johannesburg, I don't think, but in KwaZulu-Natal, it was an absolute catastrophe. And I make a lot of comparison with the elephants who, when they're actually creative when they destroy. Humans, unfortunately, destroy just by pure vandalism, just pure destruction. And so I do like this chapter because it's, I know that a lot of foreigners were actually shocked to learn about the destruction in KwaZulu-Natal, but I just wanted to say that I was extremely admirative of the spirit of Ubuntu of the South African people defending their own shopping center, their own communities in the most amazing way.
Yeah. More and more people, I mean, the humans are getting into cities and they don't know about wildlife. We are losing touch with the wilderness. And it seems that's another importance of the kind of places like Thula Thula, to relink. What's your opinion of the importance of wilderness to the human spirit?
Yeah, we can't live without each other. We have to. The necessity to reconnect is something we try to do actually with our volunteers academy and with people coming to places like ours. That's exactly what you say. That people living in big cities and so on, they lose the connection with nature, and nature is life. And I can tell you, because coming from the cities, I know the importance of reconnecting with nature. It's an absolute necessity. We have to live, human, animals, nature. I think there must be more, bringing more awareness of the necessity of getting closer to each other. Absolutely.
A little story from my side is that I had been working all my life as a criminologist on humans, and I did a 4-day trail with the Wilderness Leadership School in Umfolozi. And I realized then, with a shock, that I knew nothing about the rest of creatures. I only knew about humans. And it's from that point that I started being an environmental journalist. It was an absolute tipping point. So, my relationship to the wilderness is that people need to go to it because it changes you. It really does change you. Francois, I think we're going to sort of start winding down here.
Yes.
I just want to tell the audience that you can buy a copy of Elephants of Thula Thula directly from this webinar website. It's a truly wonderful read. It's a beautiful book, and I think it's got a great cover too. It's very compelling. Francois, I thank you very much for coming along and talking about your book. I wish you all sorts of success with it. I hope you're writing another one, the next one. Are you?
Yeah, it's a cookbook.
A cookbook.
That every single guest of Thula Thula requests for years now. But it's going to be a fun cookbook. It's not going to be just recipes. It's going to be fun stories of elephants called Dinner with Elephants. Voilà. That's
fantastic. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. It's really amazing to me, sort of old as I am, that we can be somewhere in the world and in our own room at the same time. It's the stuff that used to be science fiction, and now we do it all the time.
That's right.
Francois, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Don't forget to buy the book. Farewell, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Don. It's been lovely to speak to you.